In Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro said the process of eliminating 3 zeros from the currency, expected to take place on June 4, will be delayed for at least 60 days. Maduro said the aim is to stabilize the country's exchange system and to improve the economy. The Venezuelan president said sanctions imposed by the US and the EU are making it harder to boost the economy. He added that private banks had warned of very large risks if the change was not postponed.
Another topic I want to talk about, and for which I want to ask full cooperation from the private and public bank sectors, is the electronic payment system. Our levels are good. 85% of the national payments are being processed electronically. I ask for all of your support to regularize speculation and outsourcing of the paying stations around the country, so our people can pay for their services at regular prices and without paying extra 20 or 30% of those prices. Please, Comrades Minister, Superintendent, Bank Association, Public Bank Sector, fix this and inspect it. I also await your answer and suggestions so we can legally work with you and solve this problem that is inconveniencing our people.
Our correspondent Estelle Yanis has more from Caracas.
We will be following these economic announcements from now on, and most of all the special fund created for post-electoral times, which are based on the 6 main priority areas that President Nicolás Maduro announced after winning the presidency, which will see him rule until 2025. This was conceived in order to push back against the economic war being waged on Venezuela, as well as against organized crime and price speculation. Now, regarding the politics, we will continue to follow this call for strengthening national dialogue, which looks for peace and reconciliation. It is important to say that President Nicolás Maduro has been attending many meetings with different parties. We just saw images last week in which he was meeting with Javier Bertucci, who was the candidate of the party Esperanza por el Cambio. We must wait for the response of other parties to see if this dialogue, meant to achieve national peace, can be developed further.
That was Estelle Yanis from Caracas. Also in Venezuela, opposition members met President Maduro to discuss the release of political prisoners. Members of the COPEI party said this is a first step towards President Maduro's proposed dialogue. The Venezuelan president had asked for a list of imprisoned political actors involved in violence in 2014.
A political meeting has just taken place between the opposition party, which received the most votes among all opposition parties during the May 20th elections. I'm referring to the Social Christian Party, COPEI. The president received the party's directors, and from there they shared perspectives from the point of view of the Venezuelan opposition and the point of view of the Bolivarian revolution of the government of President Nicolás Maduro.
Nosotros queremos cambiar al gobierno.
The government. We believe that this is a government which has brought Venezuela to a situation, a large economic crisis. But while we can't change the government, we want the government to change. That the government rectifies, that the government applies an economic policy that allows us to resolve the problem of poverty that has increased in Venezuela.
Former presidential candidate Henry Falcone says he will use records of the Dominican Republic dialogues as evidence when he launches his complaint against the electoral process. Via Twitter, Falcone said they have 93% of the ballot sheets and argued the agreements weren't adhered to. A new electoral process must be convened, he said, within the framework of a single law where there is no advantage for some. A panel from the Organization of American States has accused the Venezuelan government of crimes against humanity. A new report from the OAS lists alleged political prisoners, extrajudicial killings, and arbitrary detentions. The panel has recommended submitting the report to the International Criminal Court. This month, Venezuela confirmed its decision to renounce its membership to the Organization of American States. Earlier, we spoke to U.S. journalist Max Blumenthal, who said the OAS had applied double standards. Blumenthal questioned the panel's connections to Israeli war crimes at the 2002 military coup against Venezuelan democracy.
The non-answer basically deflected. Mr. Canton said, I was only at the National Democratic Institute until 1998, and I'm proud of my work. And Kotler just said everything I said was false. Well, it wasn't false. Erwin Kotler took to Twitter to blame the government of the Gaza Strip for Israel's killing of 62 protesters in one day. He spent his whole career defending Israeli human rights crimes, and he is apparently a key member of not only this panel, but of the panel of the so-called experts that produced this report. Kotler also accused Venezuela's government of over 6,000 extrajudicial executions, and he said that Venezuela was responsible for the worst humanitarian crisis in Latin American history, in the whole history of Latin America. So I found that the panel was extremely propagandistic, and I didn't get a response to my question.
Now moving to Colombia, where presidential hopefuls are looking to form alliances with other parties for the presidential election. José Manuel Jiménez has the details.
First round of elections last Sunday, candidates Iván Duque and Gustavo Petro are looking for potential alliances for the second round. Iván Duque has been considering the manifesto of Radical Change Party, suggesting a possible alliance between the Radical Change Party and former presidential candidate Germán Vargas Lleras. Gustavo Petro has met with the Democratic Pole Party, which is divided between supporting or not supporting the candidacy of Gustavo Petro. The Green Alliance is also divided between whether to free the militants of the Green Alliance or support the candidacy of Gustavo Petro. In the next couple of days, meetings between the Democratic Pole Party and the Green Party will take place to decide on their stance in the second round of the Colombian presidential election.
From Bogotá, that was José Manuel Jiménez. Still in Colombia, problems continue at the Ituango hydroelectric plant project, where around 1,500 workers have been evacuated due to the risk of a landslide. Radars detected possible landslides inside the complex, which has been in an emergency since May 12th. The flooding of the Cauca River, provoked by the hydroelectric plant, has forced the evacuation of 25,000 residents. Workers are trying to prevent the dam from collapsing, which would put 130,000 people at risk.
And for the protection of all the staff, there was an order for evacuation. The main priority is to maintain the decisions that have been implemented for the safety and welfare of the people.
Hundreds of people have marched through the streets of Buenos Aires. They are protesting against President Mauricio Macri's austerity measures and conditions imposed by the International Monetary Fund, or IMF. Workers' unions, social organizations, and pensioners fear this deal will generate a new economic crisis.
We are going back to the 90s, a time where we didn't have jobs and we didn't have anything to eat. Now we are in the same position. We have no jobs and our pensions are miserable. We can't afford anything.
We as pensioners experienced this before. We lived through the 90s where the IMF economic measures affected thousands of pensioners.
The IMF agreement will cause problems to the public sector. A loan from the IMF will bring economic measures reducing teachers' salaries and education investment funds.
Protesters are also demanding new laws to help people living below the poverty line. Let's go to our correspondent Edgardo Esteban from Buenos Aires with more.
Social organizations and labor unions continue protesting across the country. Most of them are gathering together in Buenos Aires outside Congress to demand Mauricio Macri's administration pass emergency laws which will provide food and health. They also want laws that will provide pay raises and also credit loans for farmers and small businesses who are struggling with higher taxes. The protests will start again on Friday outside the presidential palace in Congress to demand new measures to face the economic crisis.
Edgardo Esteban from Buenos Aires. We're taking a short break now, but join us again after this video from our multimedia team. Welcome back. U.S. actor Danny Glover is in Brazil this week to meet the parents of murdered counselor Marielle Franco. He will also meet social movements and government officials to discuss this case.
U.S. actor and UN ambassador Danny Glover joined a number of activities with the Popular Truth Commission to investigate the actions of the military intervention in the state of Rio de Janeiro.
For us, it's a dream that Danny Glover has come. He's trying to help prevent the violation of human rights in the state of Rio de Janeiro, which has greatly increased thanks to the military intervention.
At the Casa de Raíces of Brazil, Glover met with the parents of Marielle Franco, the councilwoman who was assassinated along with her driver Anderson Gomez this past March. The case has yet to be solved by authorities.
What happened with Marielle is not meant to stay confined to Brazil. We have supporters like this who are following up on the story in order to give us strength and support in an unclear situation.
For her parents, it's important that the memory of Marielle remains alive so that her fight continues onward.
Let other Marielles stand up, because in Rio de Janeiro and Brazil, we need people, leaders, to speak for the classes that have no voice.
Danny Glover went to the local government headquarters to present the numerous complaints that have been received. At the same time, the military commander who was responsible for the security of Rio de Janeiro after the military intervention did not join the meeting. The governor tried to justify the absence of the military representatives.
I talk with them all the time. They are with the entire crisis cabinet taking care of urgent issues, like supplies from nearby cities.
Glover also received complaints from residents of a favela in Rio and from representatives of Afro-Brazilian religions who denounced the violations suffered by the community. The actor highlighted the role of social movements in organizing for justice.
Both in the work that is being done by social movements, the work that's being done by movements like MST, I can talk about what I see the possibilities of being, despite the tragedy, despite the pain, and despite the inertia or inaction of public officials.
Glover will also visit Sao Paulo and Curitiba in the coming days. The actor and U.S. activist lives with a commitment to join the campaign that demands justice for Marielle Franco, and which is also denouncing the constant violations of human rights carried out by the state here in Brazil.
Desde Rio de Janeiro, André Vieira y Sebastián Soto, Telesur, Brasil.
Also in Brazil, oil workers are set to start a 72-hour strike this Wednesday in a new blow to President Michel Temer. This comes as the trucker drivers' strike reaches its 10th day. Unions representing oil workers are demanding the resignation of oil state company Petrobras chief executive Pedro Parente. They are also asking Petrobras and the government to stop fuel prices rises. The 10-day trucker strike has emptied roads and left major cities running short of food, gasoline, and medical supplies. The truckers have lifted roadblocks in some areas to increase the flow of goods. At least 150 food trucks escorted by armed soldiers made it into Rio de Janeiro, where many supermarkets had run out of fresh products. Officials warn it will take days to restore supply lines disrupted by the strike that at its height saw over 1,000 roadblocks on key highways.
What we hear in the media is that the strike has ended, but as we're seeing, there are parts of Rio de Janeiro state where the strike still continues. And even if the strike ended today, it would take at least 7 days for sure for everything to go back to normal.
United States President Donald Trump and his Mexican counterpart, Enrique Pena Nieto, have argued once again over the construction of the border wall between the two countries. During a rally in Nashville, Tennessee, Trump accused Mexico of failing to stop undocumented immigrants crossing into the U.S. He repeated to his supporters his campaign pledge that Mexico would pay for the wall.
Money, and they do absolutely nothing to stop people from going through Mexico, from Honduras and all these other countries, the caravan, all of this stuff. They do nothing to help us, nothing. They're going to pay for the wall, and they're going to enjoy it, okay? They're going to enjoy it. They do nothing for us.
President Pena Nieto tweeted a response to Trump's accusation and reaffirmed that his country will not pay for the wall. Mexican journalist Héctor González Antonio was found dead on Tuesday morning in Tamaulipas, Mexico. González worked as a correspondent for the newspaper Excelsior and was CEO of the news website Todo Noticias. This is the 6th journalist killed so far in Mexico this year. 11 others were killed in 2017. The Attorney General of Tamaulipas has opened an investigation to find those responsible. In Cuba, the tropical storm Alberto has left 4 people dead and over 40,000 evacuated. Flood waters swept away a bridge and damaged roads and other infrastructure, leaving many communities cut off and nearly 60,000 people without electricity. The storm has also damaged crops, especially rice, tobacco, bananas, and beans. The provinces of Sancti Espíritu, Villa Clara, and Cienfuegos were the most affected. There is also considerable damage in Ciego de Ávila and Matanzas. After 3 days of heavy rain, the storm is moving north, now towards the U.S. coast. Cuban President Miguel DiazCanal has met his cabinet and emergency services to analyze this damage. Quoted by Cuban newspaper Granma, he said, quote, "As we have done before, the country will overcome this difficult situation." This is the second crisis faced by DiazCanal since he was elected. The first one was in May 18, when a plane crashed after taking off from the Havana airport, leaving 112 people dead. Later on Wednesday, DiazCanal is scheduled to visit Venezuela for his first official visit after taking office in April. Austerity measures continue in Puerto Rico, where the Fiscal Control Board asked for a 10% cut in pensions and a reduction of the holiday period. The withdrawal of the mandatory Christmas bond, the reduction of the medical leave, and the free ability to fire employees are other measures proposed by the federal body. Haitian President Jovenel Moise is on a 5-day state visit to Taiwan. Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen held a military reception in his honor in Taipei. President Moise arrived to the island along with a 30-member delegation. His team will meet with counterparts across several ministries and conduct trade and investment negotiations. Haiti is one of Taiwan's few remaining diplomatic allies and has had ties with the Caribbean country since 1956. Taiwan, which is claimed by China as its own, has formal relations now with only 18 countries. Moise ends his visit on Friday.
Ship that will be beneficial to both our economies, thanks to the enormous market that will develop for Taiwanese business investments and ahead of the large projects necessary in Haiti.
I appreciate Haiti's long-term support of Taiwan's international participation. Haiti voiced for Taiwan both at the United Nations General Assembly last year and at the World Health Assembly this year.
We'll take one last short break, but join us again after this video from our multimedia.
شيف خليك ايدك وجهك مبين شيف هي
Yes!
Thank you for joining us again. The Italian central bank has warned that the country's political uncertainty could lead to a financial crisis. The head of the bank also said any moves by political leaders to weaken the country's public finances could unwind years of economic reform. The populist parties that won elections in March blamed the European Union for its economic setbacks. Market experts say this crisis that hits the Eurozone's third largest economy is also a crisis for the European Union.
The financial crisis that will follow would lead to this country taking many steps backwards. It will mark the name of Italy detrimentally in the world. We are not constrained by the European rules, but by economic logic.
More than 170,000 Starbucks employees have undergone racism awareness training following several cases of racial bias in their stores. The training comes after 2 black men were arrested in a Philadelphia branch when a white employee accused them of loitering. Reports say top executives addressed employees via video. Employees watched a documentary and discussed racial bias. Stores will be given toolkits to help employees understand and deal with the issue. Now let's have a look at some other stories making headlines around the world.
Russian journalist and critic of the Russian government has been gunned down in Ukraine's capital, Kiev. The 41-year-old Arkady Babchenko died of his injuries after a gunman fired shots at him as he left his apartment. The former war correspondent worked in Kiev as a presenter for Ukraine's channel ATR TV. Police suspect the murder was linked to Babchenko's work as a journalist and public political position.
Arkady loved freedom very much and loved Ukraine. He planned to live here with his family. He planned to work here. It's a tragic loss. It's a huge loss for international journalism because he was one of the few who wrote the truth about what the Russian Federation is doing.
Greek trade unions have called for a 24-hour strike in protest at new austerity measures linked to the country's bailout. The strikes are affecting transport and other services across the country. Greece signed up to 3 multi-million bailout packages from Eurozone states. Austerity measures are due to continue for at least 2 more years after the international bailout ends in August. More pension cuts are due to start next January. Security forces in France are evicting migrants from a camp along the Canal de Saint-Denis in Paris, where more than 1,700 people have been living in makeshift tents. The camp was home to Sudanese, Somali and Eritrean migrants for several weeks. They will be housed temporarily at more than 20 sites across Paris. United States TV network ABC has cancelled its popular sitcom Roseanne after its star Roseanne Barr posted a racist tweet comparing a former Obama administration official to an ape. ABC said Roseanne's Twitter statement is abhorrent, repugnant and inconsistent with the network's value.
Images by Mexican artist Frida Kahlo are just one click away thanks to the creation of a virtual museum dedicated to her work. Faces of Frida shows the work of the Mexican painter and tells the story of her life. 800 items from 33 museums and private collections across the world are available to view. Users can access the Google Interactive exhibition on its website or with a mobile app. Kahlo is the first artist from the 20th century with this kind of tribute. And with that important figure in Latin American art history, we come to the end of this news brief. But this and other stories, as you know, you can find on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And join us also on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.
In South America and